Today I'm going to show masking an easy image using the object selection tool and masking using the object selection tool and refining using the paintbrush tool, as well as adjustments and clipping masks. Once you've created your new file for this assignment, web large, adding a unique name, checking that it's 1920 by 1080 and 72 resolution, as well as having the check mark for artboards turned on, we're going to hit create. With this artboard on our screen, we want to bring in images to mask. I've gone to Bing Images and searched for lotus flower and flowers. Once I click on the image, I have this very convenient view image box, which gives me the high quality version of that the flower image. So I'll go into my CO221 demo folder and then project 1, and I'm going to click and drag that image into that folder, and I'll do the same for this flower image that I found, but I'll have to make sure that I hit the view image button before I try to drag it. So view image, this takes me to the high quality version, drag it and place it. Now I can click and drag to select both of these images and then drop them into Photoshop. I'll wait for them to process. I see one came up with an X of lines through it, 2 lines making an X. I'm going to hit enter or return to place it, and then I'll do the same with the second one. I'm going to start with just working on this lotus flower because it is the more simple image based on its it being one flower and having a really clear foreground and background, the foreground being the flower and the background being the grass. It also has high contrast. The background's darker and the flower is much lighter, which is going to make it easier to mask. So I'm going to turn the background flowers off, leave this on, go to my object selection tool. If I don't see it within this selection tools, I'm going to go down to my 3 ellipses, look for the object selection tool here. If I still don't see it here, which I do, I would go to edit toolbar and then try to find it here. So it would be on this side, and then click and drag it to the other side. I'm going to bring it to the top and then click. Done. So now I can just click on my object selection tool. I can hover over the flower, see if it lights up in blue for me. If it doesn't, I can click and release, and you'll see that now that I have the marching ants around the flower, it has been outlined. If I want to start over with my selection, I could hit Control D to deselect. That's also available in Select, Deselect. Another way to grab this is I could click and drag around the part that I want to grab. This can be useful if you have an image with several focal points, like 2 flowers or a person in one side and a balloon on the other. You could actually click and drag and you'll see it made that same line. Up here I can also add or subtract using my object selection. So if I hit this subtract where my mouse is, I could go into this flower and try to cut this flower in half and only select half the flower. You'll see that the marching ants line moved a little bit off the entire image. I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to hit Control Z to go back to this entire selection. Next, I will go to the masking tool, which is down at the bottom right corner in this row of options. It's a white rectangle with a dark gray circle in the middle, and if I hover over it and don't move my mouse, it says add layer mask. I'll click on that and you can see the layer mask has been created. So here I'm seeing the edges of the river or whatever was behind in the background, so I'm going to actually double click on the mask. The mask is this black square with the white object inside showing what I'm seeing versus what is being cut out. I'm going to double click on that, And it's going to bring me to this view where I can do some global refinement. So I'm going to actually shift the edge so that it is further in. So I'm going to take it to -10. Let me try even more. To try to cut out some of that darker outlining. I'm going to go to -48. I think that is better. Let me go back to 0 to see the difference. Yeah. And then I'm also going to add a feather. The feather adds a blur around the object, which really helps it blend in with the background. So now with that blur, you can see it even blends in with that red color that it's showing us to help with the preview. So I'm going to click OK. And now I have this flower here that's ready to be mixed with other images. I'm going to now work on my more complex masking. So I'm still on the masking tool. I've hidden the top layer. And I'm going to select just this flower to start with. I need to change my tool back from the subtract to this selection. So I'll leave my mouse there. There's new selection. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click on that one flower and see if it creates a selection for me. I see my issue is I'm actually still selected on lotus flower. So I actually need to click on the beautiful pink marguerite in order for my object selection tool to detect the layer. So now this is in light gray versus this. I've switched this beautiful pink marguerite to light gray so I can select the flower. Okay, so I clicked and it selected a lot of the image. As you can see, this marching ants is going all around. So I don't like that. It's a little bit too much for me, so I'm going to do select, deselect, or control or command D on a Mac, control D on a window. And then I'm just going to click and drag over this one flower, and hopefully it does just select that flower. This one worked a lot better. I'm going to do add to selection, and I'm going to try and grab this flower over here. And so I want to grab flowers that aren't necessarily connected to each other. I think that would be nice. Okay, so now that I have about 5 flowers selected, I'm going to hit the mask tool. Before I hit the mask tool, let's say I wanted to make more copies of this. I could actually duplicate this line by clicking and dragging it to this plus button. And then I'm going to hide it for now. So I'm going to click make my mask. I have a duplicate of this. I'm still selected on the one that I've made the object selection for. And I'm going to hit this mask button in the bottom right area. Add layer mask. So this is nice, a nice start. As you can see, if I show the background image with the eye, I'll see that I still have that there. We'll come back to that. Now here, I need to work on this. So obviously there are things that that didn't cut out so well. So what I would do is I'd make sure I'm selected on this mask, not the image. See how this white outline goes around whatever part of the layer I've selected. I want that around the layer mask. Then I'm going to zoom in on, let's start with this one, to the right, either with the magnifying tool. You can click the magnifying tool and then click and drag, click and drag to get really close, or click and drag. I'm holding the Alt key to zoom out. You can also control zoom down here. I could go back to 100%. Or what I prefer is to do control on a window, command on a Mac, plus. The space bar is also really useful. So if I hold the space bar, my mouse will turn into a hand and I can actually move the image around my screen. So now that I have this here, I want to look for my brush tool. This I know where my brush tool will be because it looks like a brush, but this is actually the brush mixer tool because it has this little drop. I'm going to go in and look for it. It's not here, so I'm going to search in my 3 ellipses, and it's here, brush tool. So if I start using it, I can see, oh wow, it's bringing my image back. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo what I just did. I know that it's going to bring parts of my image back because in this bottom left corner, there is a black square and a white square. Set foreground color and set background color. When my foreground color is set to the top, to the frontmost layer, it's saying, okay, go ahead and add things back in. But if I switch these by clicking on this arrow, and just a warning, if you do click on the color, you just need to hit cancel before you can change anything else. You hit these arrows and it will switch. So I'll do that a couple times. I click on this switch foreground and background. So if I switch it towards the background color, the black is set to the foreground color, I'm actually able to go and start erasing. In addition to erasing what I'm seeing as maybe a problem, I can make my brush size larger. So it's a 9. I can make it 47 all the way up to 3000. It's a really big jump, but let's make it more like a 30. And you can also set hardness and softness. So you'll see this hardness is set at 100%. So that's like a hard line when I brush with it. But if I change that to maybe a 40 or let's say 50, it's going to be a little bit softer. So it kind of automatically puts a feather on it. So that way I can like go in and make these edges a little bit softer. And I will probably switch my size as I'm brushing to make it a little bit easier. There is a keyboard shortcut for this. It's the left and right bracket tool. Left bracket makes it smaller, and the right bracket will make that brush size bigger. You may want to go ahead and erase all of this in the background because it is not part of that flower. So if you wanted to be really particular, you could go ahead and do that. So after you've done this to all your flowers, you would want to bring your lotus flower back, bring all of your images back, and start to move them into different places to create your composition. Since I have only refined one, I'm going to click on the mask, and I'm actually going to erase the rest of them as well. So I'm going to click on my brush tool. I can also hit B to get there. I'm going to make my eraser very big and make sure it's set to the black, and I'm going to just go ahead and erase these. So for right now, I'm working on with these 2 flowers. And there's a couple things we can start to do. If you have show transform controls turned on, you can resize. Remember that resizing with pixels, it's easier to make it smaller than it is to make it bigger. I'm not going to enlarge this one, but I will go ahead and copy and paste it. So edit, copy, edit, paste. There's also Control C and Control V. Part of this edit is you can also transform, and we could flip horizontal to flip the way the lotus flower is facing. This could be really nice if you say wanted to have 2 lotus flowers. Copy and paste, and then image, edit, transform, flip horizontal. So let's make a quick composition so that we can start to go a little bit deeper into the adjustments. I'm here adding a rectangle to the image, and I want this to be very neutral color. So I clicked fill, color wheel, and then I'm going to go into like a really soft grayish purple. And click OK for now. And I'm going to even make it a little bit lighter. Okay. And make sure it's behind all of my images. So right there, it was on top of this layer. So I'm losing my one of my pink flowers. So I have made it smaller. Also with this image, I would like to transform it and rotate it again. So instead of going to edit, flipping it, I'm actually just going to rotate it like this. You may be wondering why it's rotating in such a long, sort of on a wider circle than like the point is. It's not rotating from the center, it's rotating from a different place on the circle. And that's because it is still accounting for the rest of the image that's being hidden behind the mask. So in the adjustments panel, and if you don't see the adjustments, you can always go to Window, Adjustments, and check it on. So if you do not see it, it would be checked off. And then you can go to Window, Adjustments to check it on. Here I notice that my flowers that are pink are a lot brighter and higher contrast than the lotus flowers. And I like that they're bright and high contrast, although I don't think it goes well with my background, and I'd actually like to bring that down slightly. So I'm going to try that. So I'm going to click on the flower I want to edit. I know it's going to be this one. And then I'm going to choose either brightness contrast, could work, levels, curves. These are all ways to adjust the light. In addition, there is exposure, vibrance, hue, saturation. A lot of these things you'll find on other editing softwares, even on your phone, so you might have some familiarity with them. With levels, which is one of the probably least familiar to you, it's going to show you a graph of actually what is going on below it, but as you can see, as I move these triangles, and where I'm going to focus on is these three triangles, it's not just my flower that's getting affected, it's also the background. So when you're using adjustments, it's going to be really important to go to your adjustment layer, make sure it's placed right above the layer you want to affect, right-click, and create clipping mask. Now this arrow will appear saying this level will only affect this image. I'm going to bring that in and try to reduce the contrast slightly. I'm going to take the middle one and make it a little less dark. I like this for this one, so I'm actually going to copy this level, choose my top pink flower, hit paste, right click, create clipping mask, and now it has affected both of them. I also think that there's a hue and saturation issue, but now that I have this here, I'm going to brighten up the lotus flowers because that might fix the saturation issue. So for this, I'll use brightness contrast just to show it. Here, I'll want to increase the brightness slightly and the contrast, and then also right click, create clipping mask. I'll again duplicate this by hitting Control C, go to my other lotus flower, hit Control V, and then right click clipping mask. So you'll always have to kind of repeat that clipping mask. Okay, I think that's a little bit better. I am going to duplicate this group one more time. I copied and pasted them, I selected them all by clicking and holding Shift, 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 Shift. You can see that as I did that, my layers here were picked. I can also do it in the layers panel by hitting this and then Control, 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 and then you can copy and paste. And I'm going to flip this around. So my image isn't kind of dull. To make this easier to move together, I could create a group by hitting Control G or edit group. I'm going to say just do the Control or Command G. Okay, it wouldn't let me, presumably because I don't know why. But now if I do it, it would group. And then I want to make sure these are both have clipping masks. Okay. So we've done levels, brightness, contrast. You could add in things like you could change the entire hue and saturation of the image if you wanted. It becomes a little bit unnatural, but you can go in and say, like, bring the magentas into a different hue, or just desaturate it slightly if that went better with your composition. I'm looking just for, like, I guess a pattern, a little bit of emphasis. I'm also creating a little bit of space here. This has no particular meaning other than finding ways to show you how to use the mask tool and the adjustment tools. But I can also show you a layer blending tool. So you might have this flower that you really like, and we can duplicate that one more time, Control C, Control V, potentially change the size, and experiment with it by clicking on this normal button. This is a layer blending tool, and you can see there's different ways to blend it. Dissolve, darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn, darker color, lighten, screen, dodge, overlay. There's a lot of different options here. I'm going to go with color burn is nice. So I think I'll use that. And if I like it enough that it kind of is taking over, I might just choose all of these again by clicking Control Shift and change them all to, Shift and click and change them all to color burn. Okay. What this space in here does is allow me a little bit of room maybe to add text. So if it's not required, but if you wanted, you could go to this text tool and say this blog was about gardening. You could type in or flowers. Let's just do flower power. Once it's typed, you'll see that you have options at the top to change the font, the typeface, the font, the size, and the color. So let's go in. I'm going to double click or click and drag to highlight it all. and change it from Arial to something maybe a little bit more that fits with the theme. And black is not the right color, so let's see how a darker purple, or maybe even a dark pink looks. Okay, once that's done, I can move this to the center, and that doesn't really fit, so I'm actually going to put it onto 2 lines and make it a little bit bigger. If 72 is the highest here, that isn't actually the ending. You could go all the way up to any number, really. You can type in 1,000 if you want. I won't, but you could. And I'm going to even make the power a little bit bigger so that it fits right under flower in a really nice way. Make this I'm just going to keep playing with that size. You could also have them be different colors. And you can also set a blending mode to this, or you could do something else by double clicking on the text layer. It will bring up layer styles, and this is where you'll find things like drop shadow or bevel and emboss to give it a more 3D effect. And if you click on bevel and emboss, you can change the size of that 3D effect and the depth. You can soften it or harden it. It's soft. No, that's softer. Click OK. And, potentially with some more work, have a complete image. When you're done, you'll hit File, Export. Quick Export as PNG is OK, or artboards to files. Quick Export as PNG will save directly out to the folder that the Photoshop document saved in. Artboards to files would be this view. You would browse towards your folder and then hit Run. I haven't saved this yet, so I'm going to save as on my computer. Save on my computer and save to my folder CO221 demo, project 1. Save. So if I do File, Export, Quick Export to PNG, I'm going to make sure it also goes back into that folder. CO221 demo, project 1, save. One last thing is, if I got to this point and I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep editing, you would want to click this artboard name. Yours would probably look a little bit more clear. Mine is having a glitch. But either way, if you click on that, it should give you some plus buttons so that you may start to duplicate or create a new artboard. But if you want to duplicate this artboard, you can right-click on the name, on the gray next to the name of your artboard, and hit Duplicate Artboard. Click OK. And it will create a duplicate for you right next to it. So if you wanted to, say, test out this text in a really much bigger size, more in the foreground, click Enter to place it once you change an object. If you wanted to do that and say duplicate it, and then the topmost layer, we might do soft light, and the bottommost layer of our copy, we could bring the opacity down. So now if that's gone, that's what it looks like. If it's about 50%, we can see that soft light looks like this. We can really start to play with that visual. And never be afraid to go off the page and use text as visual elements. This can be really exciting and pretty. And with that, a little bit of experimenting, a little bit of play, you can start to create a composition that has meaning, says something, maybe in this case says something about flowers and like the power of them, and then the text being bold like this and loud as a way to, visually represent that strength that is trying to be communicated, and sneaking in a little bit of a clear visual in the back there. So there's my version 2 and version 1. So it can be really useful to duplicate and keep on experimenting. I would then again export, quick export as PNG. It will go to my project 1 folder, select folder. And here now I have several images to look at. Artboard 1 copy, Artboard 1.